Head. Imagine looking at a bottle of beer or wine and realizing that the story behind it began before writing, before farming, and perhaps even before the human species existed. Fermented drinks may look like products of civilization. Head. But our biological relationship with alcohol reaches much deeper into the past. Long before anyone planted a field or invented a brewing vessel, primates were already encountering ethanol in nature. Head. Welcome to Mr. Bip, where we explore the forgotten experiments, discoveries, and survival strategies that shaped the ancient world. If you enjoy uncovering the strange origins of everyday things. Head. Subscribe to the channel and join us as we travel back through millions of years of human history. Our story begins roughly 10 million years ago, on the forest floor of Africa. Head. Ripe fruit had fallen from the trees and begun to break down. Natural yeasts reached the sugars inside it, and fermentation produced tiny amounts of ethanol for a hungry primate. Head. The smell of that fruit may have acted like a signal. It meant sugar, it meant calories, and it meant that food was nearby. In 2014, biologist Robert Dudley brought this idea to a wide audience in his book, The Drunken Monkey. Head. His hypothesis proposed that the attraction many primates show toward the odor and taste of ethanol may have developed because fermentation once helped them locate calorie-rich fruit. Head. Genetic research adds another piece to the puzzle. Scientists studying an enzyme called 8H4 found that an ancestor shared by humans, chimpanzees, and gorillas developed a much greater ability to metabolize ethanol around 10 million years ago. Head. That does not prove our ancestors were actively searching for intoxication, but it suggests that they were increasingly exposed to fermented fruit, and that the ability to process ethanol may have offered an evolutionary advantage. Head. By the time early humans appeared then, alcohol was not a completely unfamiliar substance. Nature had already been producing it for millions of years. Head. But encountering fermented fruit by accident is very different from deliberately producing a fermented drink. So when did people cross that line? One of the most remarkable clues comes from Raqefet Cave on Mount Carmel. Head. In present-day Israel. The cave was used by the Natufians, a complex foraging culture that lived in the Levant near the end of the last ice age. Inside the cave, archaeologists studied stone mortars carved into the bedrock. Head. Microscopic residues and patterns of wear indicated that people had processed several plants there, including wild wheat or barley. Some grains had been malted. Head. And the researchers concluded that the mortars were used in the production of a cereal-based fermented drink around 13,000 years ago. That alone would be extraordinary. But the context makes the discovery even more important. Head. The Natufians lived before fully developed agriculture in the region. They gathered wild cereals rather than growing fields of domesticated grain. Head. Yet they already possessed the knowledge and organization needed to transform those plants into a beer-like beverage. Raqefet Cave was also a burial site. Some mortars were found near human remains. Head. While other evidence points to funerary gatherings and communal feasts. The drink may therefore have been prepared not as an ordinary refreshment, but as part of ceremonies that honored the dead and strengthened bonds among the living. Head. For a long time, the popular version of history sounded simple. First, people settled down. Next, they invented farming. Then permanent villages and complex rituals appeared. Head. And only afterward did they begin brewing alcoholic drinks. Raqefet complicates that sequence. It shows that hunter-gatherers were experimenting with cereal fermentation before domesticated grain became the foundation of everyday life. Head. And the cave is not the only site that challenges the old story. Roughly 1,000 years later, hunter-gatherers in southeastern Anatolia began building monumental enclosures at a place now called Gobekli Tepe. Head. They raised enormous T-shaped stone pillars, some weighing many tons, arranged them in circles, and carved them with foxes, snakes, boars, birds, and other animals. Head. All of this happened before pottery became common in the region, and before farming communities had fully developed. The scale of the site raises an obvious question. What could persuade scattered groups to gather? Head. Cooperate, quarry stone, transport heavy pillars, and construct such elaborate spaces? Feasting may have been part of the answer. Researchers found large limestone vessels at Göbekli Tepe. Head. And some have suggested that they could have held fermented cereal drinks during communal events. Chemical indications once discussed as possible evidence of brewing have not settled the question. Head. So the alcohol interpretation remains debated. What is clear is that the site brought people together for extraordinary shared activities, probably including ritual and feasting. Head. That possibility leads to one of archaeology's most fascinating debates. Did the desire for beer help encourage the birth of agriculture? The idea is sometimes called the beer before bread hypothesis. Head. Scholars, including Patrick McGovern, have argued that fermented drinks may have offered powerful social and ritual rewards. A feast could build alliances, mark a seasonal gathering. Head. Honor the dead, or reinforce the identity of a community. If large quantities of grain were needed for those events, people would have had a strong reason to collect more cereal. Head. Protect reliable harvesting grounds, and eventually cultivate plants closer to home. But this is a hypothesis, not a proven explanation for farming. Agriculture emerged through many pressures and opportunities. Head. Climate change, population, local ecology, food security, social competition, and new technologies. Archaeologists have also found bread-like remains older than the evidence from Raqefet Cave. Head. Proving that hunter-gatherers were processing wild cereals in several sophisticated ways. The important point is not that beer definitely created farming. It is that ritual, celebration, head, and social cooperation may have influenced one of the greatest economic transformations in human history, alongside the need for food. By the 7th millennium BCE, the evidence for deliberate fermented beverages becomes even clearer. Head. At the Neolithic settlement of Jiahu in northern China, archaeologists examined residue preserved inside pottery jars. Chemical analysis revealed a mixed fermented drink made with rice. Head. Honey and fruit, probably hawthorn fruit and/or wild grapes. This was not simply an accidental batch of spoiled food. The combination suggests choice, knowledge, and repetition. Head. People were selecting ingredients for their sugars, flavors, and fermentation properties approximately 9,000 years ago. It is among the earliest chemically confirmed fermented beverages known anywhere in the world. Head. From there, fermented drinks became deeply embedded in early societies. In ancient Egypt, beer was not merely a luxury for festivals. It was a staple food, a ration, an offering. Head. And sometimes an ingredient in medical remedies. Records and archaeological evidence show that workers could receive bread and beer as part of their compensation. At the settlement associated with the Giza pyramid builders. Head. Large-scale bakeries and food production areas reveal the enormous effort required to feed organized labor crews. Egyptian beer was generally different from many modern commercial beers. Head. It could be thick, rich in suspended grain, and nutritionally useful. For people performing exhausting physical work, cereal-based drinks supplied fluid and valuable calories. Head. Fermentation could also make some prepared beverages more dependable than poorly stored water. Although the common claim that Egyptians drank beer only because all Nile water was unsafe is far too simple. Head. Beer also occupied a sacred place in Egyptian life. It appeared in temple offerings, funerary customs, festival traditions, and myths involving the gods. Physicians used beer and wine as carriers for certain plant-based preparations. Head. In that world, the boundary between food, payment, medicine, and ritual was not always sharp. One vessel could belong to several parts of life at once. Now step back and look at the full timeline. Head. Around 10 million years ago, an ape ancestor became better able to metabolize the ethanol naturally present in fermenting fruit. About 13,000 years ago, Natufian foragers at Raqefet Cave were producing a cereal-based fermented drink. Head. Probably for ritual gatherings, before domesticated grain dominated the region. Around 12,000 years ago, communities at Göbekli Tepe were organizing huge collective projects and communal feasts. Head. With the possible use of fermented drinks still under debate. By roughly 9,000 years ago, people at Jiahu were combining rice, honey, and fruit into a carefully prepared beverage. Head. And by the time the first great states arose, fermented drinks had become part of wages, nutrition, ritual, medicine, trade, and social identity. Alcohol did not simply appear after civilization was complete. Head. Its history runs through the same processes that created civilization. Experimentation, cooperation, ceremony, agriculture, specialization, and the human desire to gather around a shared experience. Head. That does not mean alcohol alone built the ancient world, and it does not erase the risks alcohol carries. But it does reveal something extraordinary. Head. A natural chemical first encountered in fallen fruit may later have become one small force within the rise of farming, organized labor, religious ceremony, and communal life. The containers changed. Head. The ingredients changed. The methods became more controlled. Yet, the story may still lead back to a patch of overripe fruit on an African forest floor millions of years ago. If this journey changed the way you see an ordinary part of history. Head. Subscribe to Mr. Bip, like the video, and share it with someone who enjoys archaeology and the hidden origins of civilization. And tell us in the comments, do you think early people cultivated grain mainly for survival? Head. For feasting, or for a mixture of both? This is Mr. Bip bringing the ancient human story back to life, one discovery at a time.